Gaff, are you okay?
Oh, good. Thank you, gentlemen. Good afternoon. For you?
We are a lot better than we were in December. We can put it like that.
Yeah. I was too much hair in December. No, better place now.
We're being a little bit worried that we are about to enter the same kind of situation as we had a year ago. We had a decent team. We had a couple of very good loanees who were so good, actually, that they were taken away from us during the summer. And now we have had partly a repetition of that. I mean, we have a good sort of base of young players, but we needed a couple of loanees in January to really take off. Are we now entering a stage where this is becoming an annual circle? We get the loanees, we get good results, but they are actually playing too well, and we end up losing them and getting nowhere.
No, I hope not. It's a good question. I think the first year we came in, literally my first day, I was told we had to cut the budget. So we lost 5 players immediately, and then we ended up having 15 new players come in. Too many. Second year, as you say, same again. Mm-hmm. But I think now, last year when you had someone like Eberici Eze and Bright, you're going to lose those players. They were attracting too much interest. And Eberici was always ready for the Premier League. Last year, there was no doubt. So you look at him, you look at Jordan Hugel and Naki, and again, the bids that came in for them, we could never match the offer. So that cycle happened. This year, however, we have a number of young players I think will go on to play in the Premier League, but not yet. So you look at Rob Dickey, you look at Seni Dieng, you look at Ilias Chair, you look at Chrissy Willock, these type of players. They're only very young. They will go on, but right now the best thing that can happen for them is another year in a championship. Hopefully they can go up with QPR, but if not, they will attract the interest next season.
Do they know that, or more important, does their agents know that?
They always know that, but you have to look at the Premier League level is so high, and the money. You look at the fact that the Champions League and Europa League could easily have 4 Premier League teams, tells you the level and the money involved at Premier League level. So I think they're good, talented young players, and I'm not being rude to them. They know what I think of them, but there's many good young players. They have to show, like Buendia at Norwich, they've got to show, for example, if Ilias wants to go Premier League, he has to show that quality and consistency, which I think we all agree he has shown in patches. What he needs to do to go to that Premier League level is to show it on a consistent basis. And that's why next year, I think, is a really good opportunity. Look at Rob Dickey. Very good season for QPR, done very well, needs to toughen up in certain areas, needs to react better to a mistake, takes it too personally, but that's all part of his learning. So Rob will go on to play. He reminds me of James Tarkowski, who we had at Brentford, who has gone on to be a very solid Premier League player. Very similar to James. Another year of Championship football, and Rob Dickey will be ready for the Premier League.
Can you say a bit about Charlie Austin and the influence he's had behind the scenes? I mean, we've seen him on the pitch, but we've also been reading statements about his influence in the group. Can you give us a little bit more insight into how he is, how he works on that level?
No, Charlie's been tremendous. I will answer that question, but so has Stefan Johansson. And Stefan Johansson is a different character to Charlie. Both players have had a fantastic influence. Charlie is louder. Charlie is an old-fashioned footballer, very loud, very funny, good one-liners. But he demands from the players, and he demands from them in training every day. So that side of it is really good, and he has got no hesitation in barking at one of the players, really digging them out, and the next minute giving them a big hug and cheering them on. Charlie can do that effortlessly. Stefan is different. Stefan is, we would say, more unassuming, quieter, but he earns respect by the way he plays. He earns respect by what he does every single day. I'll give you an example, a private example probably, that we report for a match day at 1:15 for a 3 o'clock kickoff. and one of the young ones walked in at 13 minutes past 1. They weren't late, but 13. Stefan got there at 12:30. But all Stefan had to do was look at him, look at his watch, and do this, and that was enough. That guy, next game, he gets in at 1:45. But Stefan didn't have to shout and scream. Stefan just had to do one little thing. So Charlie is very, very good on and off the pitch. He demands, but he's a loud one-liner, very funny character, lots of stories to tell. Stefan's very different, and so is Lee Wallace, another senior player who is fantastic with the young players off the pitch. I know Lee from Glasgow, but those three senior, and Albert Adoma, we're very, very blessed to have 3 or 4 senior top quality pros, and they've had a real impact. So yes, Charlie and Steph, of course, coming in, but also Albert and Lee and Jeff Cameron, obviously is leaving us now, but they've had a massive impact on the young players on the squad as well.
So what you're saying is that things didn't only change on the pitch in January, it changed in the dressing room as well.
Yeah, because when you go 10 games without winning, so the Bristol City at home game, I always refer to that. I think we had 72% possession, 20 odd chances. They had 4 shots and scored 2 goals, and we lose the game 2-1. And you worry about the self-belief. You worry about the mentality of a young player when you're playing well and not winning. So all we did when Charlie and Steph came in, when Charlie's first game, Luton away, he scores after half an hour. And straight away you see the reaction and the belief flows through the veins of the players. They know they're a good team. I think Paul will tell you that when you speak to them, they sense now that they're a very good team.
What is Brentford doing right that we can copy? Because they also lost influential players. They lost very good players in the summer, and they're still up there.
What they do well is they have big resources. They have scouts watching every single game around the world because of the gambling nature of the owner. We can't rival. They've got 100 people in a warehouse. So does a Brighton owner. The same, he is the same business. QPR cannot rival that level of resource. But what we can do is keep building with the young players.
You mentioned Brexit, and how will that influence the QPR recruitment then? I mean, we have people like Elise Chair in Saint Dieng, who we picked up from the lower leagues in Europe. How are the rules now?
It'll be on these GP points, on the work points, basically. So there's a points-based system. So someone said yesterday, the player at Barcelona B. But again, unless they play with their first team and international status, we won't get access to these players. So we can open some markets. It can open up some South American markets, for example. But every time you buy a South American player, as you guys will know, it's hard for them to settle. It might take 6 months to settle. So I go back to Brentford. We signed the boy Jota from Malaga. And for the first 6 months, I think I used him maybe at the most half an hour. He was freezing cold in August. He's wearing a gloves and a bobble hat in August and July. He couldn't get used to London. He was used to Marbella, but by December he was magnificent. But if QPR sign a South American player, we haven't got 6 or 9 months to let them settle in. We need the player to hit the ground running, and so for us, recruitment is so important. But the likes of Sam Field will be our market. Sam Field, Jordi DeVries, these type of players will be perfect for QPR. Sam Field's 22 years old. That type of player is vitally important to QPR.
We have Kakai, we have Chair in Dieng, who's been developing through our academy and becoming solid championship players. Who will be the next academy player to establish himself in your matchday squad? I mean, McKenna, Batash, Gubbins, Shadipo. Who's next in line now?
This is a big question, so please don't argue with me before I get the answer out first. They've got to be good enough. Supporters love to see the young players come through. My background is academy director. I started that Next Gen Series tournament with the best under-19 teams in Europe. We had Barca, Dortmund, PSG, Liverpool, Chelsea. All the best teams were in it. So my background is youth. And I'm sure, like all of you guys, there's nothing better than seeing a guy come through the academy and play. But they've got to be good enough. And I hear people say, try him, throw him in. This is championship football. they can get eaten alive if they're not good enough. So right now, Aussies come through the system. I mean, what is? I'll ask you a question. What do you call coming through the system? So would you say Ilias Chair has come through our academy?
He's been there a while, so in this context, yes.
So Ilias Chair joined the club at 19, 20, Paul. Abir Eze joined the club at 19. Bright Asai Sambil at 20. So for me, an academy player is someone who joined the club at 11, 12, 13 and comes through the system. That's what I call it. If we're going to go and buy them, that's Brentford's model. Brentford, a B team, is buying players at 16 to 19. So that I think academy player is someone like Ozzy Kakai. The Sandfield is 6'2", and the midfield. Look at Jeff Cameron, 6'3". Stefan Johansson is 6 foot but powerful athlete and strong. And you look at it and go, can they survive physically? And I know the owners say to me, "Oh, you're always on about size, Mark." I love small players, but they've got to be technically outstanding to have a chance of surviving in this division. And we're not looking for players just to be good enough. We're looking for players to take QPR to the next level. I hope very much, yes. I get on great with Steph. You know, I started that process with Steph, and we had the first phone call, and we had an hour on the phone, and then we spoke again and again, and we spoke every night. And you know, when you speak to someone and you know straight away that they're the right character. And I played against him so many times, so I knew that was right. And he has more than impressed everyone at QPR. Now we've got to try and keep those type of players. If we go too loud in the press, it alerts Fulham and alerts other clubs as well. So we've got to be very, very cagey, very sensible how we approach this one. I think there's a very good chance. I think Steph enjoys his time at QPR. He's been great for us, but we've been good for him. And I think he could really have a huge impact for us. And likewise, we could really extend his career, and he enjoys his football. But we've got to make sure that all parties come together at the right time. So I'm not avoiding your question, and I hope very much we can get something done. But it may be one where we have to be patient and just bide our time a little bit with that one. When we were trading, there'll be many, many markets, but ours was a foreign exchange. We would trade before the euro, dollar mark, dollar Danish, dollar Paris, dollar, cable, dollar sterling, dollar yen. I was always doing the yen. So there was all these various currencies, and we would have a team of between 12, 15, 20 traders, predominantly men around the desk, and it was highly competitive. And you had your budget to make. So my budget might be $10 million a year to make. Excuse me, let me get rid of this. Mine was $10 million a year. So I knew in my mind, I had to make $1 million a month, $250 a week, 50 grand a day. And the pressure was on to make that money. But it relied on, if the dollar was being sold, for example, dollar Norway, dollar Danish, we would all react to that. So we'd all help each other out, the communication, the teamwork, the competitive element, and it got feisty. It got very, very feisty in the trading room fights and arguments. It's the same as a dressing room. So for me, it was moving from a dealing room to a dressing room. It was a really easy transition because you're controlling 15 competitive guys who want to do well. If they do well, they got well rewarded. If they didn't, they lost their jobs. It's football. If you do well in football, you get a new contract. If you don't, you're looking for another club. So it was a very, very easy transition. All we had to do really, in my mind, was apply the same rules and create the same environment. So it was I find it a very smooth transition, Alan.
Yeah. We had some different kinds of managers during the last years. One of them, I won't name names, but had a bit, like I see, kept his distance from the players. What about you? How are your relationships with the players?
I'm the opposite of that. You work closely with them every day. You're asking them to go in and fight in competitive environment. You're asking them to trust you in terms of how they get looked after, the team selection, the training every day. So no, I don't see how you can be distant. I know of one very famous manager who is very distant, really distant with the players. I don't see how you can have that relationship. I think for me, they don't always like what you have to say, but respect is the most important thing for me. So You know, the days of shouting and screaming at a player that as you know, about 20 years, those days are long gone. No player really benefits from that now. So your relationship with them, how you talk to them, what you do, I think is really important. So now I'm the opposite of what you described.
And what about Dykes? His transitions after January. You have to say something about that.
But Lyndon,
have you done something with him?
Now I was aware of Lyndon in Scotland, and I had a knee operation last July, and I was sitting there with the ice on my knee, and I got a phone call from a good Scottish friend who said to me, "What's your thoughts on Lyndon?" And I said, "I really like him, but I don't know if we're going to get him. It'd be too expensive." And he said, "I think this figure gets it done." And that was it. So I carried on calling from there, and we knew we had a talented footballer. But don't forget, 5 years ago, he was playing on a beach in Australia. That's where he was playing. So he had no academy education. So when he had a bad spell before Christmas, Lyndon had no knowledge of what to do. You know, in the academy, when you're playing, if you're playing for Rosenborg, for example, and you've played in loads of international games and you have a bad spell, you know what to do. He didn't know how to deal with that. So he had to deal with the press, the media, the social media. It was difficult for him. All he does, though, he keeps working hard, Lyndon. He really works hard every day, and that work paid off. Charlie Austin gave him a lot of confidence in terms of him. He immediately teamed up at the Luton game, and they got on well together. Stefan talks to him. You know, Lee Wallace suddenly emerged on the left side, and he's getting more chances being created. And suddenly, once he scored against Reading, that was it. He was playing well up to that point, but once he scored, you can see almost the weight lift off of his shoulders. And but he is now. He's one player. We've all talked about Ilias, and he's one player. If he has a good Euros against England, the clubs will come in for him. He's a very likable guy. You know, the squad liked him. He hasn't got any ego. He's well liked by all the squad and the staff. And the feedback from Scotland, speaking to Steve Clarke, was that he did exactly the same with the Scotland squad. They liked him straight away. Then he gave them something they never had. They had an outright number 9, and Scotland, they love a number 9. You know, their history of it. They love Dalglish and Andre and Andy Gray, and they just love a number 9. So here was Lyndon Dykes come along. My worry, Alan, was that he was getting too much publicity too early. You know, he was on a beach, as I say, 5 years ago. Now he's Scotland's number 9, moved to the Championship, and they're talking about being Scotland's striker for the next 10 years. It was all too quick. So I think that was part of his dip before Christmas. And I think the call-up just gave him a justified confidence that he's still in a good place. He's still wanted by Scotland. I think he feared he might be dropped. So when he gets called up by the squad, he then scores, and his confidence has never looked back. I mean, the goal he scored against Rotherham, he lost the game, but an unbelievable goal against Rotherham. Then you look at the quality of his all-round play has been much improved. So I think for me, he's had a really good end. If he can have a good Euros, there will be so much interest. Rangers and Celtic will always look to buy Scotland's number 9, for example. So, you know, if Lyndon leaves QPR, it will be for a sum of money that's great value for QPR. Have no doubt about that.